In this instructional video, students will be able to compare two fractions with different numerators and different denominators by using visual fractions, creating common denominators and numerators, or by comparing to benchmark fractions. Just like when we compare whole numbers, with fractions we want to use the greater than, equal to, and less than symbols to compare fractions. There are a couple ways to compare fractions. One way is to create a representation using fraction manipulatives. Let's use 2/6 and 7/8 as an example. This model represents 2/6 as there are 2 of the 6 boxes shaded white. This represents 7/8 as there are 7 out of the 8 boxes shaded white. From this model, we can see that 7/8 is greater than 2/6. We can also compare fractions to 1/2 and 1/2 to compare and see which fraction is greater. Let's use 2/6 and 7/8 as an example again. We can put those numbers on a number line ranging from 0 to 1, with a benchmark half going right in the middle of the number line. We want to create equivalents for 0 and 1 using the denominator 6 and 8. So we will have 0/6 and 6/6 to represent 0 and 1. We will also have 0/8 and 8/8 to represent 0 and 1 with a denominator of 8. We also want to create equivalent fractions to 1/2 so that we know where to place these two numbers on the number line. An equivalent to half with a denominator of 6 is 3/6, and the equivalent fraction with a denominator of 8 is 4/8. Now we can place 2/6 and 7/8 on the number line. 2/6 would go right before 1/2 because 1/2 is equivalent to 3/6, and 7/8 would go about right here, closer to a whole because it's 1 away from 8/8. So from this we can see that 7/8 is greater than 2/6. We can also create equivalent fractions with common denominators. Let's again use 2/6 and 7/8. We can create common denominators by finding the multiples of each denominator to see which numbers the two denominators have in common. If you list the multiples of 6 and the multiples of 8, you can see that 24 could be a common denominator. We then set up the equivalent fraction to create an equivalent fraction for both of these fractions. 2/6 times 4/4 equals 8/24. So the equivalent fraction for 2/6 with the denominator of 24 is 8/24. 7/8 times 3/3 equals 21/24. So the equivalent fraction with the denominator of 24 for 7/8 is 21/24. So we can see, now that we can compare these two fractions with the common denominator, that 21/24 is greater than 8/24. We can also look and see common numerators. With this, we have to think about the size of the pieces. So if there are 3/8 and 3/4, we know that 3/4 is 1 away from a whole. So 3/4 would be greater than 3/8. 5/6 and 5/8, again, let's think about the size of the pieces. 5/6 is closer to the whole than 5/8, so 5/6 would be greater than 5/8. And 6/8 and 6/10, again, the size of the pieces, 6/8 would be greater than 6/10. We can also compare fractions by comparing them closer to 1 whole. So if we have 7/8 and 2/3, we want to think about the size of the pieces. 7/8 is 1/8 away from a whole, and 2/3 is 1/3 away from a whole. So if we put that here, either on a number line or represent it with fraction manipulatives, we can see that this is 7/8. The 1/8 away is the gray piece shaded. And this is 2/3. The gray piece shaded represents the 1/3 away from a whole. Now, since 1/8 would be a smaller fraction than 1/3, 7/8 would be greater than 2/3 because it is closer to the whole.